Okay, everyone, we're going to be doing the Pink Floyd album tier list. We're going to be ranking every album, all 15 studio albums on this one. We have been running through the albums in the Discord, and also everyone's been voting on what their favorite one is. So I'm going to compare my rankings to that at the end of the video as well, if you want to see that. We are rating them from S+ over here at the top, which is going to be the best tier, the best albums that Pink Floyd have to offer, and also some of the best albums of all time. That's why S+ exists here. S is some of their top work, but it doesn't quite meet the standard of some of the best records of all time, for me anyway. A is still a pretty solid album. B is good, but kind of flawed in places. C is still enjoyable, but just nowhere near as good as this sort of stuff here. And then D is stuff that I don't like. So we're going to start with the debut album, which is Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And I think, personally, this is a bit of a Marmite album. I do understand that. But for me, personally, this is an incredible debut album and something that I also find inspiring. So this is an incredible psychedelic journey of a debut album. It's hugely influential to many artists that I like Bowie, Flaming Lips, Blur, etc. It's the only album here with their original frontman at the helm doing the lead stuff, doing the writing and things like that. So if you don't know about Syd Barrett, who is the lead frontman, the original lead frontman of the group, then his story is basically he was like the driving force of the band until he kind of overdosed on LSD and he lost his mind and wasn't able to do the stuff that he was able to do before, and he just became they just phased him out, basically. It's a bit of a sad story, really. But this album is a great album, in my opinion. To me, Syd Barrett is the best at doing that childlike wonder and whimsy thing, and mysticism as well. He also has a very imaginative approach to lyrics, where he talks about all sorts of topics. He talks about space, he talks about satanic cats, he talks about scarecrows, gnomes, and the I Ching as well. And I think he's an incredible writer. I rate Syd Barrett quite a lot, and quite influential to me, as I've mentioned before. This album does have some quite tough competition, though, with its probably closest competitors being Sgt. Pepper's and also VU, Velvet Underground, and Nico. And it kind of falls in the middle of those two, but it's also not quite as daring as those two albums. But it's still a very spectacular album and a very influential album. It borders S+ to me, but it's just on the edge of S+. I'm going to put it on S. I would kind of like to put it S+, but we're going to stick it at S for me there as well. Another note, I just love how free the band sound creatively on this album, because they're just doing whatever the hell they like. A lot of stuff like Interstellar Overdrive, for example, they go into the noise territory and just kind of improvise and see what happens. It's a very free sounding band. It's something that I wanted to do before. I couldn't find the musicians to do it, but S for me on this one. So that's Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Okay, moving on to Saucerful of Secrets. I've found this album quite haunting, quite depressing in places. Syd Barrett is still on this record, but his role has been relegated to just like some slide guitar here and there, and one song at the end of the album called Jug Band Blues, where he sings about his own mental decline, which I always find quite chilling, in fact. Where he sings the line, "It's awfully considerate of you to think of me here, and I'm quite obliged to you for making it clear that I'm not here." And that always sends shivers up my spine. It's just right at the end of the album there, where he's actually wrote a song about his own mental decline. The rest of the album kind of plays out, to me, it sounds like kind of a ghost of a band without a leader, which it kind of is at that point, and everyone is trying to keep it together there. The songs on there are either kind of an attempt to imitate Syd's style, but to me doesn't quite succeed, and it comes across like a kind of a fake smile, trying to carry on as normal kind of thing. but it does lack a little bit of conviction. It feels like they know they're in trouble. Those songs are like Corporal Clegg and Seesaw and things like that. Although I do think Richard Wright does the best job at imitating Sid's style in here on his songs, Remember a Day and Seesaw as well. Or the sound of the album is extremely dark and mournful. They have these two sort of things kind of playing against each other, like Set the Controls to the Heart of the Sun, as well as the title track as well, which is really very gloomy, almost scary of a instrumental track there. And you've got that mournful organ at the end of it as well. The album, to me, is more than the sum of its parts, I feel, and really captures the emotions the band was going through, and it affects me emotionally in that way. And I gave it an A for this one. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. This next album is More. It's a film soundtrack, and it's extremely fragmented. There's a lot of different styles in this album. It's a little bit of a chocolate box of an album. You kind of pick in there, and you're not really quite sure what you're going to get. But the quality of the songs or the chocolates are extreme highs and extreme lows on this album for me personally. Standouts for me, Nile Song. Absolutely love Nile Song. One of the heaviest tracks that Pink Floyd have ever done. And Gilmour's vocals on it are insane. Where he's just like, I was standing by the Nile. It's great. Love it. And Cymbeline is quite a nice sort of sing-along kind of track. I did like that song. It does get stuck in my head, though, and then it gets a little bit annoying. I also like the main theme and the dramatic theme as well. The rest didn't quite hit me that much. I did find it enjoyable. It's just quite messy. It's messy, but enjoyable. And I would like to see the film that it accompanied, because I can't really imagine a film to this music, but I put this one at B for me. There, I stuck that one at B, because I didn't quite vibe with it on the same way as the other two albums, but I still quite enjoyed it, but it was a bit hit and miss. Okay, Ummagumma. I actually had a lot to say on this album, but I've cut it down, thankfully. You'll be glad. No one wants to hear me speak for an hour on Ummagumma. I don't think so. Anyway, unless you do, then maybe I will speak for an hour on Ummagumma, but I have cut it down quite a lot. It's something that does interest me, this sort of style of music, and this album is quite unique as well. So the first half of this album is split in two halves. The first half is a live album. The second half is more experimental. So the first half, I'm not the greatest fan of live albums in general, but this did have some standout moments. It had Careful with That Axe Eugene, which I think is the only time it's kind of put to record apart from Live at Pompeii. But I think it's the only time it's on an official record there. The version of Saucerful of Secrets is pretty good as well. I wasn't a huge fan of the version of Astronomy de Mine, but it was okay. I just wasn't like blown away by it, and I wouldn't really choose to listen to it that much, that version of it. And it was a good live album. It's a solid live album on the first half, but I do think the versions of those songs are done better at live at Pompeii. So it goes against it a little bit, because I'd rather listen to the Live at Pompeii versions, which I do think are better. The second half was actually a lot more interesting to me, so it's very experimental. Each of the band members go away and kind of write their own little thing for the album. So Richard Wright does his own thing, Nick Mason does his own thing, Roger Waters does his own thing, Gilmour does his own thing, and they're all very different from each other, but kind of have the same sort of experimental vein going through it. It has very avant-garde influences. You can hear a lot of John Cage, a lot of Stockhausen-esque music concrete things, especially in stuff like Several Species of Small Furry Animals, which is a very music concrete sort of piece. It comes across like a collection of demos rather than a full work, which for me actually is to its credit. I kind of prefer that. If it felt like they were really trying to do something like a masterpiece, avant-garde kind of thing, I wouldn't like this album as much as I actually do. I think that might come across a little bit pretentious, but this is truly experimental in the sense that they're trying to find a way forward for the band without their lead without their lead writer, and they're all trying to like come together and come together by going off separately and finding their own sort of voices there. So I prefer it that way, that it feels like a collection of demos. It's kind of worth a listen if you want to hear the more experimental side of Floyd that people aren't used to. But overall, to me, it comes across a bit like pale imitations of music they would have found interesting at the time. For those unfamiliar with avant-garde artists and stuff like that, it might seem very boundary pushing, but even in the world of rock music, this sort of stuff had been applied better and more interestingly by like the Beatles in Tomorrow Never Knows and Revolution 9, and Frank Zappa with like Lumpy Gravy, and many other sort of bands. So it was good to hear them experiment, but I don't think it was particularly fantastic versions of what they were trying to do. I put it in C there, but I still like it, and I still would like to listen to it just for the intrigue. Next up, we have Atom Heart Mother. I saw a Gilmour interview recently, which explains my opinion on this album quite well, actually. Gilmour said it's where we started to find the Pink Floyd sound, post Syd Barrett, but it wasn't quite at the point where it was good yet. And then Meddle is the point where he thought it was good, which is kind of how I feel about this particular album. It's very ambitious. It has Pink Floyd's longest track and kind of their first attempt at a long-form piece of music, like over 20 minutes long. And it's a big, bombastic fusion of orchestral music and rock band, and a rock band. And I don't think it quite lives up to its potential, that particular track, but mainly it was marred by technical limitations. The band was kind of like forced to not tape edit, so they had to do the whole 26 minutes. The bass and the drums had to be recorded as one take, which just absolutely nuts, and I would not like to be the band in that position. So that's pretty crazy. And then the orchestra kind of came in as like a last minute idea, and they had to play on top of the band that didn't play to a click track or anything like that. And there's just bits of the track where it doesn't quite hit the way that I think the band would have liked to. But it's still quite a cool piece of music, but it doesn't quite live up to its potential, I think. The three conventional songs on this album, I think are great on there. I particularly like If, which was the Roger Waters song where he's kind of like bearing his soul and talking about his insecurities. I particularly like that song. It moved me quite a bit, and I liked his singing style on that. Richard Wright's Summer 68, is it? Or 69? I think it's 68. Also a lovely song. And also Fat Old Son is actually a classic, a Gilmour one. And that was also beautiful. I love the conventional songs on there. And then it closes with Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which feels like a more complete version of what they were trying on Ummagumma. And I think that works better than the stuff on Ummagumma, personally. And I quite liked that piece of music there, where they're using the music concrete stuff and also sticking some music in there as well. I quite enjoyed that piece. I put this one at B. I think I put it above More. I think it is better than More. Onto an album that I'm actually quite a big fan of. So this is Meddle. And to me, this is where Pink Floyd really start to find their groove, start to find their feet as a band, after the loss of Syd Barrett, of course. From the off, on One of These Days, it's, to me, the best thing that they've done thus far. It's really exciting. It's kind of like a funky, very distorted, almost creepy, when he comes in with One of These Days, I'm gonna cut you to little pieces, piece of music, reminiscent of Doctor Who, in a way. The middle section is full of conventional songs that I think have a lot of charm and a lot of good songwriting on there. And it kind of serves to lull you into like a semi-dream state in preparation for the final song, which is another long form, and it takes up a whole side on the vinyl. Another long form song, Echoes, which is one of the Pink Floyd masterpieces, in my opinion. And one, if you've never heard before, you absolutely need to listen to it. It's one of those songs that you need to experience. It's like a 23-minute fully immersive sonic adventure, which takes you through an almost like subnautical world, somewhere between sky and sea, because you have those kind of seagulls, albatrosses, on the guitar sound kind of coming in as well. But it's a journey. It takes you through all these different places there. It also is quite lyrically beautiful, and has the lyric that Waters often attributes to him finding his niche as a lyric writer, which is the one where he says, strangers passing in the street by chance, two separate glances meet and I am you and what I see is me. A line about empathy, and it's kind of what Roger Waters goes on to talk about lyrically for their best works, which are to come there. So this one is an S for me. I don't know if I prefer it over... I think I do prefer it over Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I don't know. I don't know. I do love Piper at the Gates of Dawn, though. I'm going to keep Piper at the top, actually, at the moment. I think I'm going to keep Piper. I'm going to put it just below Piper. They're kind of like battling for the same spot. They're very different albums. Obscured by Clouds, I actually had not heard of this album before. Well, I've heard of it, but I hadn't listened to the album before. So it's kind of appropriately titled because it often gets overlooked by what came before and what came after, because Meddle is often talked about, and Dark Side of the Moon, of course, is talked about probably the most out of any Floyd album ever. And one of the most talked about albums of all time is Dark Side of the Moon. So Obscured by Clouds often gets forgotten about quite a bit. It's another film soundtrack. I think it's a little bit more put together, a little less fragmented, still a little fragmented than More. And first time I listened to this, I didn't think much of it. It kind of just passed me by. But it grows on you, this one. And I listened to it 3 times. And by the 3rd time, I was really quite in love with this album. It's very, very understated. It doesn't jump out at you. It just kind of sits there in the background. It kind of invites you to kind of join in with the album. If you kind of just sit there, it's not going to hit you at all. It almost feels like an exercise in conventional short songs for me, because there's nothing really long. There's nothing really much over 5 minutes on this album, which is weird for Pink Floyd. They do very long songs, but they're kind of conventional songs. They're less experimental than their other stuff as well. It's very chill, and it has a relaxing atmosphere, and that's present throughout. It kind of joins it together. I particularly love the song Stay. I think that was a Richard Wright tune. Really like that song a lot. Kind of reminiscent of Neil Young, in fact, which I'm a big fan of, and particularly love that song. The more I listen to this album, the more I grow to love it. I stuck this one in A, which I was quite surprised about, to be honest, because first time I listened to it, I think I was just going to stick it at probably the bottom of B. The Dark Side of the Moon. We've actually just finished a run-through live on my Twitch channel of this. I played it from beginning to end, and we're probably going to do it again after this tier list is finished. But this is the album that put Pink Floyd on the map. It really cemented their legacy in music history. It's the first of a run of 4 incredible concept albums, which are the albums that most people know Pink Floyd for. The other stuff doesn't get talked about nearly as much as this middle period of Pink Floyd's career. To me, this is a little bit of like a religious experience, and that's the only way I can kind of put it. It's something that you put on and you fully immerse yourself and pay attention to. It's not something you put on in the background or anything like that. It's something that you want to prepare your room for, maybe light some candles, have a drink of wine, something like that. You are going for a ride on this album, and it's going through a very existential ride as well. I do think this album really perfected the album format with its seamless transitions from beginning to end, and also just having a full concept there that takes you all the way through. And to me, this is like it's like life and death in a very succinct and also accessible musical format, and I don't think anything can really beat this for that particular niche it's in. It just really nails it in every sort of way, in musically and lyrically as well. It just really nails the human condition and well, life itself, really, the journey of life that we are on as human beings. If you want to know about it, you listen to Dark Side of the Moon, and it kind of takes you through that. In my opinion, that's what it does for me. Anyway, it's an absolute must listen to anyone who is interested in music whatsoever. If you go your life without listening to Dark Side of the Moon, you missed out on something. It's something that you really, it's part of the music culture, it's part of music experience, it's something that you really must listen to. And it probably has the most famous cover art of all time as well. It's one of those things where everything just came together in a beautiful kind of package and everything just fits. And it's one of those magical things that I feel like it doesn't even feel like it's created by humans. It feels like it's just was there, and it was like sent through Pink Floyd during this moment in time, and they were the messengers for this particular album. That's Dark Side of the Moon. And S+, obviously. Of course, S+. One of the greatest albums of all time. And I don't think that's argued much, really, in general. I think that's the general perceived notion of Dark Side of the Moon. It's the greatest in what it does. No one ever should try and do a Dark Side of the Moon again, because they won't be able to do it. It's one of those albums that is seen as extremely amazing, but actually not that influential, because no one bothers to try and do Dark Side of the Moon again. You listen to Dark Side of the Moon, and you're kind of like, well, I can't do that. That's been done. There's no point doing that again. So you know what I mean? Next album, Wish You Were Here. This is the band's personal favorite album. It's the second masterpiece in a run of some of the greatest albums of all time. And it's the second masterpiece after Dark Side of the Moon. Most bands would do Dark Side of the Moon and never be able to follow that up. But Pink Floyd follow this up incredibly, and I actually don't know how they do it. They do it for quite a while. Where Dark Side of the Moon is a very intentionally broad and universal in scope, Wish You Were Here is a bit more reflective and personal. It goes more into the inner workings of the band and their emotions about things, which I think is probably the natural place to go to once you get success and stuff like that, is to be reflective and to think about how you got there. So this album is bookended by the incredible, one of the best pieces of music of all time, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which is a tribute to Syd Barrett. So that reflective thing is a tribute to Syd Barrett himself. And just listen to that. Just listen to that song. Both of the songs. There's not much more I can say about it. It's just like one of those things you need to listen to. And then in the middle, we have Welcome to the Machine, and we have a Cigar, which are very much about the band's time in the record industry. And a lot of artists do try and do these sort of songs that are about their time in the record industry and their time as a artist, and how they think the record industry is kind of like corrupt and all that stuff. But it comes across a bit like first world problems. But when Pink Floyd do it on this, it doesn't come across that way at all. Roger Waters really has a knack of writing stuff like that, political statements and personal kind of things, in a way that can be universally felt by everyone. Like Welcome to the Machine can be viewed as someone being in their 9-to-5 job or anything like that, or just on capitalism or business as a whole, as a statement on that. And I think that's a remarkable achievement of those songs there. And then Wish You Were Here as well, which is probably one of Pink Floyd's most famous songs. It's kind of taking the mood of losing Syd Barrett, but it's more of a general thing about loss, about loss and missing someone, and mourning someone and things like that. So it's become something that's way more than just a song, really. And sonically, this album, you'd be hard to find anything that comes closer to perfection than Wish You Were Here. It's really sonically just gorgeous and mixed absolutely perfect. We're going to put this in S+ as well. S+ as well, for sure. A more personal, a more intimate take on what they were talking about in Dark Side of the Moon. Okay, up next, we have Animals. If Dark Side of the Moon was a musical representation of life and death, Wish You Were Here, a look into the band's inner trauma, Animals is very much a study piece on society, and a very expertly executed one, I would say, at that. It's inspired largely by George Orwell's book Animal Farm, where it gets his name from as well. The album is split into 3 monster 10-minute plus long tracks, each of which I think are some of Pink Floyd's best work, and the best they've sounded as a band as well. They sound amazing and full of energy on those songs there. And then it's bookended once again. They like to do this bookend thing with 2 acoustic versions of the same song, Pigs on the Wing. I think this album has my favorite Roger Waters lyrics on it. I think he really nails the topic. His storytelling is incredible, and he does not shy away from being sharp-tongued where it counts. One of my favorite things about it is that he talks from a very empathetic and sympathetic point of view towards the dogs and the sheep, who are the businessmen, the dogs, and the sheep are the working class people. He talks from a place of empathy and sympathy for them, but when it comes to the pigs, he absolutely just scathing, just absolutely tears into them. And the pigs are the politicians, if you didn't know that as well. And I really like that about this album. I like that approach. I think it works really, really well. In the hands of a less capable writer, I think this album would come across as a bit preachy and maybe a bit off-putting. But Roger makes sure to keep the humanity and emotion there, especially on Pigs on the Wing, where he gets a bit more personal, and he also admits himself as being one of the dogs, which I think is a very important kind of part of writing an album like this. And I'll mention again, the band probably sound the best they've ever sounded, and I want to particularly point out the outro on Sheep, because it's one of my favorite pieces of music they've done, and it just gets me hyped every time, and I go crazy. I do go crazy doing the proper good stuff. Right, Animals is going there as well. I don't know if these are all equal, the S pluses. I really, really, really cannot decide between them. Okay, we're going to move on to The Wall. This is Roger Waters' big magnus opus. He led the project, his big rock opera, and by all intents and purposes, the last true Pink Floyd album, because after that they kind of dismantle and kind of fall apart, like The Wall does at the end of this album. Spoiler alert. It's messy, it's angry, it's extremely effective, and quite moving quite a lot of the time. This album tackles social isolation and alienation, and its message is probably stronger now than it's really ever been, especially like in this day and age, this digital day and age, where we even don't like make contact very much. Like I'm making contact with you now via a screen. Can you reach me? But yeah, especially in this day and age where that's the case. I think its biggest strength is how relatable it is, really, especially the first disc. The first disc tackles much of the ways people are isolated from each other or repressed emotionally in that period between childhood and adolescence. And for me, is for sure the stronger half of the album. It's a double album, by the way. It has a disc 1, it has a disc 2. A disc 2 gets a little bit more psychedelic, a little bit more vague, a little bit more out there. But the second disc deals more with like fear and the ways governments and people in power exploit that fear. So I think that messaging on that second disc is almost more important than the first, but musically it's paced a little odd for me. It loses me in a couple of instances. The album contains many of the band's most well-known hits, such as Another Brick in the Wall, such as Comfortably Numb, probably their 2 most famous songs, and also Gilmour's most famous guitar solos on there as well, those 2 songs. It's one of those albums that will irritate you if you're not in the mood for it, but will be exactly what you need when you are. And many of its flaws are its greatest assets. In my opinion, the maximalist approach and emotional earnestness can be the best thing in the world, or other days makes you think like, give me a break, you know. Its excellence is undeniable though, and it fully deserves an S+. It is at the bottom of the S pluses for me. These are the big three. This one's slightly less. I am sticking it at S+. I have a weird relationship with The Wall, but I was going to put it S here, everyone. But it's S+. It's S+ there. I was going to put it S here though, but I tried to convince someone in the Discord that it's a great album. I can't remember who it was. And I ended up convincing myself that it deserved S+, which was kind of funny. It's a great Christmas album, lol. You listened to it while you were putting up the tree, wasn't it? Beautiful. It's white. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Tear down the wall. Don't listen to it at 2 a.m. No, I wouldn't advise, especially if it's like one of your first times listening to the album. I've listened to that album a number of times, so I know what to expect. I can listen to it at 2 a.m. I am immune. Okay, talking about divisive albums, though, this is probably more divisive than The Wall. This is the final cut, and I know K-Poco is very interested in hearing my opinions of this. So we're going for the final cut here. It's practically a Roger Waters solo album because Richard Wright's not in the band, and Roger Waters is really just kind of being like, you do my vision and just play it, please. That's kind of what's happening there. I kind of expected not to like this album, actually, because it's got a bit of a weird rep. I kind of expected not to like it. It's kind of viewed as kind of like B-sides off The Wall, but it didn't come across that way for me, actually. I kind of felt the pain and the vulnerability in Roger's vocal performances. It felt kind of like a deeply personal album in the guise of a political statement. So like, he was making this big political thing on war, but it really felt like he was more grieving the loss of his father, who died in World War II and was taken from him at a very young age. It felt more like that and more like processing that stuff to me from his vocal performances and things as well, and some of the stuff he mentions in the lyrics. I mentioned previously that Roger Waters' greatest skill as a lyric writer is being able to write something very personal or make a political statement in a way that can be felt and resonates with everyone. But in this case, on this album, he doesn't do that at all. He really seems to be like kind of blocking out everyone, and he's just kind of making this either big political statement on war, or he is just really internal. It's a bit strange because it's kind of Waters' most vulnerable vocal performances, and he's at his most vulnerable there. But the lyrics are his most guarded. They're quite impenetrable, really, unless you know kind of like the history behind stuff and things like that. They're quite difficult to get into. Despite this, it did move me, and especially on the title track, where it got me close to tears, to be honest. I really love that's the final cut, the song. Really hit me in quite a big way there. And I like the referencing to Comfortably Numb on the Strings as well. It made a lot of sense for what they're singing about on the album. And yeah, I really like this album. I'm going to stick it at A. Above Obscured by Clouds, below Saucerful of Secrets. All right, Momentary Lapse of Reason. This is mostly a David Gilmour solo album. The production is pretty 80s, but to be honest, to my ears, it's actually one of those 80s sounding albums that hasn't aged production-wise too bad. It's not super over the top. It has its moments with the reverb on the snare and stuff like that, but it's not too bad. It's quite pleasant. The instrumentation is great for me. It's full and lush, and the songwriting, though, is a little lacking at times. It often relies on some pretty static melodies and sometimes veers a little bit too far into cliche, even their own cliche. Like they do very typical Pink Floyd stuff just because they know people want to hear the Pink Floyd stuff. And that gripes me a little bit there. The writing flaws for me are most prevalent on the track Dogs of War, which might be one of the only Pink Floyd songs that I just don't really like. I don't hate it though, but I don't like it. The vocal melody is extremely derivative, and the lyrics tackle the subject of war in a rather hackneyed kind of way. The song has an interesting synth-led arrangement, though, which does redeem it a little bit. If it was full-on guitar rock stuff for Dogs of War, then it would have no redeeming qualities. But the arrangement is at least interesting. It has an interesting arrangement. I can listen to it just for a musical sense just for what they're doing with the arrangement and putting something in a little bit of a different context. There are some bangers on this album, though. There's Learning to Fly, there's One Side, and in particular Sorrow, which is one of my favorite late Pink Floyd tracks. Sorrow is a great song. Especially with the intro. I love the intro. I don't know what I'm doing the whole thing. It's sonically very pleasant to listen to. Overall, though, it comes across as an attempt at anthemic stadium rock. But unfortunately, it's kind of lacking the anthems to go along with it. There's not a whole lot to sing along to with this, even though it feels like it wants you to. A lot of the time, it's just da 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 da. And there's not a lot to sing. There's not a lot to sing along to, even though it really makes you want. It really feels like you should be singing along to. That's kind of like the whole thing. We're gonna put this at the bottom of B, probably. Up next, we are going with the Division Bell. Now, Division Bell, I think, does everything right that Momentary Lapse of Reason did wrong. In my opinion, this is night and day better than a Momentary Lapse of Reason. It's also a more unified effort from the remaining people in the band. There's no Roger Waters here, though. But from the remaining people of the band, Richard Wright is kind of back in a prominent role, and he even has a song which he sings on, which he hasn't for God knows how long. I think it's been since Dark Side of the Moon, actually, where he sings on Time. But I think since then he hasn't sung at all on a Pink Floyd album. But it's a more unified effort, and it kind of tells. It kind of shows. It's built from them jamming again together. Gilmour's writing, his music writing, feels a lot bolder on this as well. He's taking a lot more interesting musical decisions, and this is anthemic rock with the anthems because the melody is there on the songs this time. They're very melodious, even the parts where it's a little bit corny, which there are some. There's a little bit cheesy moments on there, but I forgive it because the melody writing is really good on this album, and it's a sort of an enjoyable cheesy there for me. But Gilmour has also been freed from the shackles of having writing lyrics, which is not his biggest strength. His biggest strength is just focusing on the music and creating atmospheres with his guitar, with other instruments as well, and with arrangements. But now his much more capable wife and novelist Polly Sampson is doing the lyrics, and it makes a big difference. Gilmour's able to focus more on the music, and Polly is able to write something that has more cohesive message, and this cohesive message is about miscommunication and kind of the importance that we talk to each other. Evident on songs like Keep Talking, which I think is, in my opinion, a bit of a better version of Sorrow. I really like Keep Talking, and I liked Sorrow anyway, but Keep Talking has similar vibes, but I think it's done better in that song because the lyrics are better, and also it has a Richard Wright keyboard solo, which I love the Richard Wright keyboard solo on that. And I love the way the keyboard solo goes into the guitar solo as well, or the opposite way around, I don't remember. But I love the way that they bounce off each other, and it just feels like, oh yes, this is Pink Floyd. It has that Pink Floyd feel, where the other two previous albums for this had Roger Waters' solo album feel and David Gilmour solo album. This feels like a Pink Floyd album. It has a lot of the soul that the great Pink Floyd albums have. I think this is a solid album overall, if not a little bit corny in places. We'll just put it below Final Cut there. I did prefer Final Cut a little bit more. I didn't mention High Hopes. I'm going to edit this back in. But High Hopes is up there with the best Pink Floyd songs, 100%. High Hopes is Gilmour's best solo effort as like the Pink Floyd leader there. That song is amazing. So Endless River. This is Pink Floyd's last album. It's a mostly instrumental work. It's made from leftovers of ideas from the Division Bell. This album, in some ways, is a bit of a personal project for Gilmour and Mason, because Richard Wright had sadly passed away before the creation of this album, and it's kind of the motivation for this album as well. It came out recently, well, relatively recently. Was it 2016? Might have been then. I don't remember. But Richard Wright had passed away, and Gilmour and Mason thought it'd be a good chance to revisit the stuff from the Division Bell, and specifically Richard Wright's ideas there, and kind of create something from them, just to kind of like close things off. It's quite a pleasant listening. It serves great as kind of like ambient music, where I put it on in the background, and it's good mood music there. But I don't find myself having much reasons to put this on, or for like really much reasons for existing outside of the band's own personal connection to this album. So I'm afraid we're going to end on a bit of a sour note, and we're going to stick this right at the bottom there, but it's still not D. I don't have anything in D here. I think all of these albums have really good artistic intentions, and just always offer something quite interesting, even if they're not always my cup of tea all the time. I think they offer something that it feels like it was worthwhile to listen to at the end of the day there. So none of them are in D. C is the lowest there. I did still quite enjoy Endless River, and I did still quite enjoy Ummagumma. Just not as much as the other ones. It's more that they didn't really have like a concrete thing to them. It felt like it was more for the band and nothing else, really. Which I do appreciate a lot, but I do think something should have something else outside of just being for the band. Although I think that's where it should start from, if that makes sense. Okay, there we go. There's my tier list. Hope you enjoyed or raged or agreed with me. Let me know in the comments below, or let me know in the chat now. There. I know Amelia's raging at this one. But yeah, there we go, everyone. I'm going to see what your votes were like. Now we're going to have a look at the votes thing. Here we go. It's had 179 participants, and with 1,041 votes, which is kind of a bit crazy, everyone. Thank you very much for voting. We have nothing in C or D. So everyone kind of agrees that it's a pretty solid discography there. And the top 4 are the same as me. There we go. Top 4 are the same. The S's are wildly different. I'm very, very surprised to see Atom Heart Mother here and Meddle here. That doesn't make any sense in my mind, but I think we just had a lot of Atom Heart Mother fans, or people just saw Cow and went, I shall vote for Cow. I don't really get that, but I guess we had a lot of Atom Heart Mother fans. It had 22 votes in S. What did Meddle have? It had mostly A. Okay, interesting. So a lot of Atom Heart Mother fans there. Division Bell, I'm not surprised to see an S. I don't really agree, but I'm not surprised to see it there. I will add about Division Bell that it's probably one of the best produced albums I've ever heard. It just sounds fantastic. We have Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and it's one of those albums where you either love it or hate it. As you can see, it's kind of like spread out. Mostly the lovers will vote for it, but then we've also got a lot in B as well. It's just a very divisive album there, everyone. Final Cut, a lot of A, so a lot of love for Final Cut, really. There. Saucerful, I'm actually surprised to see so low. I thought that would be a bit higher on the A's there. But I guess this isn't the same place where I put it. I'm just actually more surprised not Division Bell. Atom Heart Mother is in S. That it's interesting. I'm also very surprised Meddle is so low. But there we go. I think Meddle is great. I think that's one of their best albums. But I guess it depends on your view of the middle section, which is quite underwhelming. Can be anyway. So this order is mostly agreed upon. I did put this one lower than more though. But Obscured by Clouds is low. I do understand it's quite underwhelming though. But I kind of enjoyed it for that. I do enjoy something that's kind of just sits there sometimes, and invites you to listen to it rather than tries to like show you how great it is. Mostly B for Momentary Lapse of Reason. It was mostly B again there. There's a few A's though. There's a few A's and S's. Was there any S's? Not that many S's. There's some S plus there though. No S plus for Obscured by Clouds, which I agree. One S plus for More. Interesting. Mostly B for that. These just get into B by a smidgen. Really just got into B there. But mostly agree. Most of the stuff that we disagree on is here with the S and A kind of section. But it's not that hard. It's not like a hard disagree there. So it's mostly distributed. We definitely agree on their best work though.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to support me in what I do, then maybe you'd like to think about joining my Patreon. VIP members get access to all the covers you see here and more. Exclusive videos, all of my original songs, and demos of new tracks I am working on are available to Essential members and above. And finally, VIP members also receive a little gift from me in the mail for every 4 months they are subscribed. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.